Good morning, everyone. Happy end of the year. Custody Piece has been putting together an amazing recap of everything that has transpired in the advocacy world over the past year. And I'm really grateful to be able to share that with everybody. I'm going to include it in my e-newsletter that goes out on Monday. So if you aren't already signed up for my e-newsletter, make sure you do that. You can just go to One Mom's Battle and then onemomsbattle.com and then scroll down to the bottom of the screen. It'll give you the option of signing up for Lemonade Wisdom, my e-newsletter that goes out every Monday morning. But when I'm reading the recap that Custody Piece has put together, it just gave me so much hope. And I truly, hope you feel the same way on that because we need that to keep going. And I agree with her assessment of the entire year. This has been the most powerful year in family court advocacy that I've ever seen. And we are moving in the right direction. And it's a beautiful thing. So, good morning, Alex. Good morning, Nellie and Heather. Happy New Year's Eve. Do you know where I was? 20 years ago today, I was getting married to the narcissist in my life. Good morning, Gigi. Yay, you set up an Instagram account. Fantastic. Next week, just a reminder, we do move to Instagram. So I'm going to be doing Instagram lives. We still Coffee with Tina, but our new platform will be every Friday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So we're changing the time, we're changing the platform. We will be on Instagram Live. So make sure you're joining us over there. I just posted something yesterday on Instagram. We're starting to collect questions. So what do you want to talk about, Nellie? I see you have a question there. What do you want to talk about in January, February, March? We're going to plan out the whole quarter. So we'll be able to share in advance the topics of the day. So Nellie, I encourage you, make sure you go over to the One Mom's Battle Instagram account and submit your questions so we can tackle that at the beginning of January. But 20 years ago today, I was in Maui and went there on vacation. My mom had just died in November. And Lundy, I remember when I went to a Lundy Bancroft retreat and I was telling the story and he was like, he took advantage of your trauma by proposing to you when this was supposed to be a vacation. We had been together for about a year, a little over a year. And we had talked about engagement, absolutely. But I was in a deep state of trauma. And it wasn't just an engagement. It was, hey, let's get married while we're here in the next 3 days and not tell anyone. So I called my aunt and told her and my sister, and that was it. We got married and gosh, I know it's so easy for us to say, I wish I would have laced up my shoes and gone off running. But I have two beautiful girls as a result of that union. So I would do it again. I would do it differently, but because I would, my girls are a huge blessing in my life, and I know all of you feel the same way. So let's get started. I am Tina Swithin, author of Divorcing a Narcissist, founder of One Mom's Battle and the High Conflict Divorce Coach Certification Program, creator of Family Court Awareness Month. I'm not an attorney. I cannot give legal advice. I'm not a therapist. I'm not qualified to provide therapeutic services. And, here at One Mom's Battle, we are very much a group of survivors who I value these people so very much. And we come together for support, education, and unfortunately strategy, because until and not strategy in a way that's manipulative, strategy in a way that allows you to operate from your authentic place of truth, but that you're aware of the reality of the family court system, because you're thrust into this world where logic doesn't exist, and it's very much a system that is failing to do the job it was designed to do, or in theory was designed to do. So that's very much what we're here for. Our first question this morning is, how do you prove emotional abuse in the court system, especially when it's very subtle, insidious abuse? And I guess it's a question on top of a question. If there was an easy answer, I would give it to you. There's lots of components that go into this. Number one, are we talking about adults, or are we talking about proving emotional abuse with the children? So I'll kind of break this into two parts. If we're talking about adults, how do you prove that you were emotionally abused during the relationship? I guess my first thought on that would be, how educated in domestic violence and trauma informed are the professionals that you're working with? Because that's going to have a huge impact on whether or not it even matters, because the majority of them, even if you have photographs of, black eyes or busted lips, unfortunately, in the system that we're in, with some of the industry players, or professionals, as they would prefer to be called, it doesn't even matter. And all the other side has to say is that it was self-defense. They were trying, there's so much, they muddy the water. And that's a huge issue that we're all up against. So my first question would be, you really getting to know your family court system locally and your community, and how educated are they on these topics? Are you one of the few states that has the coercive control laws in place? But I'll tell you, here in California, we do have a coercive control law. It's like with a lot of things, if physical abuse is hard enough to prove, how do you prove that? And we're seeing that even though the law has been in place for a while now, I have yet to see a solid story of how it was utilized. And some of this comes into managing your expectations about the reality of the system, and that can be a hurdle in itself, and something really difficult to come to terms with, because again, I within about a year of my battle, I recognized and practiced radical acceptance that the family court system for me was not going to be the place for justice. It's not, unfortunately. I do hear positive stories and outcomes, so I will never issue a complete blanket statement on this topic, but in general. I'd want to really know those things. And then when I do see the coercive control, the insidious emotional, psychological abuse, when I have seen it effectively presented in the court system, a lot of times it comes from detailed journals over the years, detailed notes about what happened, and really making the other party feel that they are there and that they, having a good understanding of it yourself so you can articulate it. And that can be really difficult when we are in a place of trauma, to explain, to articulate. And so I do see, detailed notes or documentation or journaling has been successful in proving these things. But then you're up against the threshold of what's acceptable to the court is very different from what we know to be acceptable, or, where is that threshold? And so you run into those issues as well. The next part for me would be a therapist who understands narcissistic abuse, or at a minimum, trauma. So here's an example of that. When I first went to my therapist back in 2008, and I was trying to make sense of what was going on in my marriage, what part of it did I own, what did I need to work on, because you hear for so long that you're the problem, and I got to the point where, okay, if I am the problem, I want to work on that. And that's the day that my therapist said, I can't diagnose him, but you're likely dealing with somebody who is highly narcissistic at a minimum, potentially someone who could actually be diagnosed with a personality disorder. And Kate Wigley is saying therapist notes are acceptable. So here's the thing. In my situation, the way it helped me was that when I was undergoing a full custody evaluation on the second round, they interviewed my therapist, and she refused to turn over notes. But I think she gave them a brief summary. But what she said to them is, this, obviously I don't know him, I cannot issue a diagnosis, but everything that has been described to me, he actually sounds sociopathic. She told the evaluator that originally, with the base information she had been given, he sounded very high in narcissistic traits, but that the more she got to know me and to hear my story, and that she found me to be incredibly credible and honest, and that she had no reason to doubt. She said, the behaviors, I am concerned about Tina and her safety and the safety of her children, but he sounds very sociopathic. And so that, ended up having a big impact on the outcome of my custody evaluation. So, dealing with a therapist who is trauma informed, who understands narcissistic abuse, and I know that's easier said than done. It's hard to find one who is truly informed on those topics, specifically narcissistic abuse, unless they've personally lived it. Every time I encounter a mental health professional who really, really gets, grasps this issue, it's usually because they have personal experience. So Gigi says most therapists write their notes that they are vague. Absolutely. And my therapist actually begged me, don't put me on the stand. She said, I have horrible anxiety. I don't ever want to be put in that position. And so that was kind of a shocker for me. And back then I didn't really understand the reality of all of this. I don't think I would want my therapist on the stand anyway, in hindsight. But she had an impact on my evaluation process, which then filtered into the courtroom and did end up protecting my kids. If we're looking at this in terms of children, how do we prove emotional abuse in the court system? For me, it was documenting everything and then some. And that feels, I had a multiple part documentation system. Some of it was just day-to-day notes in a calendar that I carried around with me. I would notate certain things. At the end of the month, I would go through and highlight patterns of behavior, and then witnesses. There were times I would bring someone with me to a parenting time exchange, so they could see the condition the kids came back in, that they were distraught. Their own therapist, that's a whole nother topic too, because for me, I never put my kids in therapy because I expected the therapist to get on the stand, and that was, for me, the therapist was there for them. Whether we're talking about a friendship problem at school or something that I did that they didn't like, or their biological father. I never went into therapy with the intention of putting the therapist on the stand. That, in my opinion, was not where she was most useful. And so, but, just like my therapist talked to the evaluator, my daughter's therapist talked to minors counsel. The evaluator, unfortunately, our minors counsel was incredibly inept, but their therapist was fantastic and truly had their best interest in mind, and was able to document some of these things from a neutral third party professional standpoint. So it did carry weight in the evaluation. And then, with the professionals, when we're talking with the kids, making sure you're aligned with the right professionals. And we don't, a lot of times we don't have control over that. But, if you know that there is, I would start doing my research. Who are all of the custody evaluators in my area? Document thoroughly, and then start adding in what you hear about them, online reviews, really educated decisions, because so many of us, excuse me, so many of us walk into the court system just blindly believing that they're all there to protect our kids. And unfortunately, that's not the system we're in. There's a lot of collusion, corruption, bias. If you have an evaluator who, um, believes that all moms make up allegations of abuse to get a leg up in custody, you're screwed, with that evaluator. So I would want to hone in on who are the 3 best evaluators out of all of the ones here. Ask your attorney for input. Connect with others through the One Mom's Battle state chapters. Start having a list, so that you can say, here are the 3 that I would be perfectly fine with, and then let the other side have that power and control that they need. But, for me, when it came to the emotional abuse for the kids, I was actually successful. In the court ruling said, his contact originally was permanently professional supervised visits, and it was based largely on emotional and psychological abuse. So I was successful in, over time, documenting. If you don't have a good documentation system, and that's a category you're struggling in, I teach my own documentation system at the One Mom's Battle website. Just go to online courses, and the documentation course is one of the most popular. We also have a group on Facebook. Once you've taken the course, you're welcome to join the Facebook group for additional support and questions from other group members who have all taken my documentation course. But I will say, my documentation is really the reason my kids are safe today. And that was based on this topic, emotional and psychological abuse, largely. So that is my answer for that. Next question. I get this question a lot in a variety of topics. So what if the ex uses the canned responses? For those of you who aren't familiar with what The question is talking about if you go to One Mom's Battle website, you're going to get a pop-up, and it talks about I have something in my throat this morning. It talks about our canned responses, Yellow Rock communication, and when you join our e-newsletter with that pop-up, you're going to get 50 different canned responses that you can just cut and paste and use with your attorney's approval, or craft them to be your own. So it doesn't sound like someone else's words, because that can be a red flag for the court. So her question is, what if my ex uses canned responses and reverses the situation, and now I find myself under a microscope? And, this could be said about anything, any of these narcissistic support groups, anyone who's, the divorce coach graduates from my program, the tools, the strategies that they teach, it can be flipped around and used against us. And the most popular canned response is, your attempt to portray me in a negative light has been noted. And I see that one flipped back all the time. Here's the thing. There's nothing you can do. That's one thing, if we print out a wheel of control, what's in your control and what isn't. These people can pick up tactics from the father's rights groups. I see them. I belong to some of those groups online, and it's incredibly disturbing. They almost give them step by step what to do to accomplish A, B, and C, or a couple of years ago, I saw one here in California, and the person said, I'm worried about losing my driver's license because I'm not paying child support. And they basically instructed this person, if your bill is $1,000 a month, as long as you pay 20, it's not going to flag the system, so you'll never lose your license. And so the advice, is all over the place. And unhealthy individuals are not only going to use very toxic, horrible, advice, but they're also going to use advice that's given to all of us. And at the end of the day, for me, it was taking the high road no matter what was going on the other side. I had no control over what he was doing. All I had control over was who I am authentically as a mom, as a human, as a co-parent. And that's an area where I see so many people make mistakes, because we have to remember that the court doesn't know either of us. And if I am operating from a place of my ex is a horrible abuser, and I shouldn't have to be interacting with him, and I'm triggered by him or her, that's going to come through in the court. And the court doesn't know either party, and sometimes the gray rock communication, that type of thing, actually makes us present as cold and rigid and bitter or jaded. In a state where there's no laws, at fault state or a non-at fault state, if somebody is in a state where it's a no fault state like California, as soon as I hear, he had a mistress and he was doing this, my mind, I'm like, let that go. It's not going to matter. All they're going to do is spin it around and say that you're jealous, you're jaded, you're bitter. And so we have to be so careful about how we present, and not giving the other side rent in our head, rent space, to affect how we come across. So for me, it was showing up authentic. This is who I am, regardless of what he's doing. I have no control over that, and that's sustainable because it's authentic. The games that these people play, they're not sustainable. They can keep their mask on at certain junctures, and some longer than others. Some of them, my gosh, you're at a half marathon with this person and they're still not giving up. But most of them, it's truly not sustainable, this act that they play. So keep that in mind. Just, stay on the high road. It can be lonely at times. I understand that. But for the overall big picture of showing who we are, it's important. So I wouldn't give that one, personally, I wouldn't give that one a lot of energy. Happy New Year, everyone. And I just want to say I am so grateful for this community, and I look forward to all of us moving over to Instagram Live and continuing over there. I think it's an easier platform for people to join, and we can save the reels. They're easier to find and to navigate. I know this can be a really isolating journey. I kind of pay attention to the comments as we're going, and my heart breaks each and every time because I know, these stories and the failures in the system. It doesn't have to be an isolating journey. Make sure you're connected with your state chapter of One Mom's Battle. Go to ombchapters.com. Make sure you connect with the Custody Peace Advocacy Group. And happy New Year. And stay, here's the thing. I just saw a post the other day. I'll close with this. You may feel overwhelmed by the thought of setting a New Year's resolution or a goal or whatever. For some of us, it's going to be one foot in front of the other, 1 minute at a time. So don't put that pressure on yourself. The meme I saw, it had to do with, saying a couple of kind words to yourself each and every morning that you remember, or set an intention for the day when you're prompted to do that. But don't worry about burdening yourself with a big, I need to do X, Y, and Z in 2022. But I look forward to connecting with you in 2022, and everyone out there, stay safe. Take care. Bye-bye.